Hello, hello. It is that time again for a new episode of the Flow with the Grow podcast, and I'm super stoked because today I have a very special guest, and her name is Marlena Shoemaker, aka Mar or Mar Muscle on Instagram. Mar reached out to me when I had made a post about trying to find guests for the podcast and anyone who's wanting to share their story. And she reached out to me wanting to share her story around bodybuilding, getting into that at such a young age, experiencing some eating disorders, body dysmorphia, body image issues, internal struggle with her thoughts, and so much of the things that I went through. I told her that we have different stories, but also very similar stories. So I could relate to a lot of things that she was saying. And I think that you can also relate, or maybe in some way take away a few things and help you in your journey, whether it is life, growth, fitness, nutrition, any of those things. So a little background on Mar. Marlena Shoemaker is a personal trainer currently living in North Carolina. Throughout her experiences in fitness, she has learned how to create a healthy relationship with exercise and food after struggling with disorder from a young age. Marlena emphasizes the importance of a health before aesthetics approach with her clients and helps them to find balance and sustainability in their fitness journeys. I am so stoked for you to listen to this one. If you would like to connect with Mar, you have comments, questions, you want to just connect with her, her Instagram is marmuscle. That's at MarrMuscle on Instagram. Feel free to reach out to her. And in the show notes, I'm going to also link her Instagram handle, her new apparel line called Girl Apparel, which we talk about in the episode, and then a few podcast episodes and a book that she references in the episode. And if you have a story that you want to share, it doesn't have to be health and fitness related, or it can be just something that you want to share with the world, something that you've struggled through, something that you've learned and grown through, and you have found strength through that, you have grown and evolved in some way, then check out the show notes for the form to apply to be featured as a guest in Flow the Grow podcast. All right, without further ado, let's jump right into the episode. Super stoked. So I have Marlena. Is that how you say like your full name?
Marlena.
Oh, Marlena. Okay. That's pretty. I like that.
Thank you.
But you go by Mar.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we know each other because my fiance Kiana and you two knew each other. Wait, I don't know how many years ago, whatever, but you guys like connected, whatever. And then just like through her talking, like us getting to know each other, and then you guys connecting on Instagram sometimes, and then like your girl apparel. So like the connection is just through my fiance. But like it's awesome because she would always say you two would get along so well, and you guys would like just like your energy is like matches, and then meeting with you last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever, was like
I agree. Yeah, super excited to meet in person.
Yeah. So I just want to jump into your story because in today's episode, we're going to really dive into Mar's story with bodybuilding and, things with like eating disorders, possibly body image issues, things like that. Like and I know some things, but I just kind of want us to just jump right into that. You can start wherever you want, maybe give a little background info about like what you do for a living. And then we can kind of just go from there.
Okay, sweet. Yeah. So I am from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I grew up there, started college there. And that's where a majority of my bodybuilding history happened, which we'll get into. But I'm now in North Carolina. I'm actually moving to Wilmington. I'm now in Boone. And I'm a personal trainer, and I was in school, but I dropped out last semester, so not in school anymore.
And because what were you going to school for?
I had switched my major a lot. I had done like exercise science, nutrition, health psychology, and then I ended with this self-directed major that was on basically like performance coaching was my focus. And then within that, there was some like athletic performance and mindset, psychological training for athletic performance. And so I was super interested in that stuff, and I still very much am. But I figured like there's not a specific program for it. I was creating it myself, and I was using like a library of information that I have without college, like without a university. And so I can just kind of do that learning on my own. And so, yeah, I do one-on-one personal training. And at my new job in Wilmington, I'll also be doing some like group fitness stuff. So
awesome. Okay. So, and how old are you?
I'm 21.
21. Okay. This will be, I didn't, when you told me that, you just look older than what you are, but then just the way that, like, because I've seen you post on social media, like your workouts and just like whatever, and like you started your own clothing line company, like that's things that people do, I feel like late, a little bit later on in life, whereas you're just, which is super awesome. It's so cool to see. Like I love seeing younger people like starting their business and stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll get into some of that stuff growing up and whatnot.
Heck yeah. Let's just start at the beginning.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. So I was a gymnast until I was 12 years old, and I played hockey for a couple of years in there, just rec. But gymnastics was my like main core sport. I had tried soccer, I had tried softball, whatever else. And as many people know, within gymnastics, there's like a lot of disordered habits, whether it comes from coaching or just body image, whatnot. Dance is really similar with that. And so I believe that a lot of these things stemmed from gymnastics. But anyways, so I did gymnastics until I was 12. I always really liked the fitness and conditioning aspect of it more so than like the actual gymnastics itself. But I was super into it for years. I would like be doing flips in my backyard or whatever. My cousin was a gymnast too, and so we bonded over that. But yeah, so at 12 years old, I quit. I remember like waking up one day and literally being like, I don't really want to go to practice. And I told my mom, and she was like, all right, let's finish off this little package that we got, and then cool, you don't have to do it anymore. And even before I quit gymnastics, I had started doing like, do you know what Blogilates is? She's like a Pilates.
Yeah, I forgot about that, but yes.
Like back in the day.
Yeah.
And so I would do like her workouts, or I'm trying to think of other YouTube channels, but I'd pretty much like go in my basement and find Pilates or body weight workouts, probably from around the age of 8 or so. So my last so for a big portion of my gymnastics, I was also doing like extra conditioning just because I really liked the intensity of that. And sorry, go ahead.
So, okay, question. So you said that you were 8 years old when you were looking at YouTubers trying to find workouts for extra conditioning. And you said, so at the last part here, you said that it was because you wanted that extra intensity. Was it because was it related to body image, or was it related because you truly just loved the grind of doing workouts?
So I think that at that time, those two things were still separated. I do have really early memory of disordered thoughts I started weighing myself so young. I remember the scale that my mom had bought a new scale. And just for reference, my parents are very healthy people. There's not a lot of eating disorder behavior in there at all. They're very much balanced, active, but not an almond mom, if you know that term.
Almond. Yes, I do.
So,
Yep.
So I don't think that this stuff stemmed from them, but there could have been some things that exacerbated it, if that makes sense.
How old were you when you started that part of weighing yourself a lot?
I remember the scale, the youngest you could set the age to was 10, and I was at least a couple years younger than that because we had to set it up below what my age was.
Yep. Okay.
So I think that, going back to your question, I think that my body image stuff was separate from the actual workouts that I was doing for at least the first couple of years of it. But I always I don't want to sound weird, but I always really liked that like pain of working out or just like that intensity and that feeling. And that's something that I still like love. I think I loved that really young, and it started with started getting super into fitness stuff. Let me turn off my ringer. And quit gymnastics at age 12, got my first gym membership at a YMCA, and that was like the Blaisdell YMCA in Minneapolis. Like I grew up going there. And I remember going into the weight room and just starting. I had no idea what I was doing, but like picking up dumbbells and okay, this feels cool, or like this feels cool. And I already had a really good base of strength from gymnastics and just like body awareness. So I feel like I was able to pick up on whether it was like form cues that I was learning or whatever I was finding online. I was able to like do things correctly, pretty, form wise is what I mean. So I was doing like some circuit workouts. I was probably still doing some Pilates stuff. But I started weightlifting, and that was what I really felt excited by. And I remember my dad telling me I was probably like, probably 12, was probably in the first year of lifting. Like, people are going to tell you that girls shouldn't be strong or something like that, but like, you don't have to listen to them. And I was like, oh yeah, Dad, like, I know I don't have to listen to them. Like, I like being strong. And like, I remember like I started to get like capped delts, and I was like so excited about it.
Nice. That's awesome for your dad to say that too.
Yeah. Like I said, like they're super supportive. All that stuff. So anyway, so I'm getting to like every little detail here. Started
love it. That's okay.
Sweet. Probably about 6 months to a year later, I want to say like 8th grade. I switched to an LA Fitness in Uptown Minneapolis. It still exists. I've gone back a few times since then, which has been like, am I allowed to swear?
Yes.
So anyways, went to the LA Fitness, got a personal trainer, and I only worked with her for a couple months before she quit that job. But that was when I like truly started to understand, okay, like what is progressive overload? Like what does push-pull legs mean? Or like what is hypertrophy? Like these very basic but super foundational, like important terms in weight training. And I will say on the side, at this point, I like had this love for training and what then became bodybuilding. And I also had this, so like this was growing, and I also had body image issues growing. I also had obsession with my weight growing. I also had like diet, nutrition, being shoved down my throat. Also, like at that point, there wasn't a lot of good information.
I was gonna say, like, did you like find your nutrition stuff from social media, or like how did you like take in that side of things?
Yeah, so definitely a combination. Also, I was vegetarian from age like 4 to 17, and vegan.
By choice or like family?
So by choice. My sister was. My parents eat meat, and I was by choice until basically my first competition prep. But with that, I found like, I don't know if you know who Ellen Fisher is, or like Bonnie something. It's like these vegan YouTubers that, in my opinion, there's a lot of like disordered stuff that came out of that. But it was them, and then like a lot of the OG bikini competitors. And so I started to find that side of thing, the competition bodybuilding stuff, when I was at LA Fitness. I ended up switching to a different location, and met a personal trainer there who I'm still in contact sometimes with today, which is like so crazy that this guy has known me since I was probably 14 at this point.
Yeah.
But he is the one that really pushed me and really introduced me into competing, what bodybuilding is at its core, not just competition, but the like lifestyle and community of bodybuilding and that whole thing, that whole idea with it. And so I worked with him. I put on so much muscle that year. Like, I was eating so much. I was not tracking my macros. Like, I think I had before, and then I had stopped.
And how old are you at this point right now?
I want to say 14.
That is just wild. Just getting into it so young.
Yeah, 14 or 15. But I think like that was the year of like 14, if that makes sense. So, I, at this point, think that my eating disorder stuff had gotten a little bit better. I don't have a lot of memories of like obsession around food, but as this training stuff grew and I got so excited about bodybuilding, and now at this point is when like OG Amanda Bucci and like these bikini competitors that started making videos at that time, I got really into them and was like, oh, like what's this fun, you know, competing thing. And at that point, I had also like, I think just because I was lifting, just because I was like in that environment a lot, like I was around a lot of people that were older than me, and not a lot of people knew how old I was. And I started getting a lot of attention for my body. And like, I would get a lot of comments on it at the gym. And I think that that kind of, for a little bit of time, replaced the, in a way, validation that I was getting from myself by restricting food. But now I was getting that from other people talking about my body, if that makes sense. And a lot of it.
Like it was like positive reinforcement to keep doing what you were doing? Like, or what? Yes. Explain that for a little more.
Yeah, I'd say more inappropriate reinforcement. It was like good. It was like, oh, you look really good. You know, it was like positive things coming out of their mouth, but I was a child. And so a lot of it was coming, like I said, from like older men. And that was just, I was starting to, you know, become a sexual being and whatever. Like I was going through puberty and everything.
Yeah.
But a lot of that from both men and women, but especially men, was like comments on my body that at that time, like I hadn't really, before it was more like, oh my God, I feel so strong. And like, I love being muscular. And then I didn't know that it was like this kink thing, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay. Do you remember some of the comments that was said?
Oh God. Nothing specific, but just like, just dudes staring. I mean, so many women have experienced that of like, staring at them in the gym and coming up to them and like making an appropriate comment, you know, or like look really good in those leggings kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like I just love bodybuilding, but like,
okay. Yep. You were super excited about the bodybuilding part, being strong, and then like these older guys come in and just start saying,
and then it became the sexualized thing.
Right. Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. So,
anyways, that was, I don't know what year it was, but I was 14, 15. And that guy kind of like became, he was not one of the creepy ones at all. He was always very good to me. We had a really good friend named Ashley, and us were like a little family. We'd meal prep together. We would train together. He had a little gym that we would personal train at. At this time, I had also started like kind of training people under him. So putting people through workouts, whether it was his clients or like I would post something on Instagram about it and have people come in. So that was a really cool part where like I got mentored into personal training at that time too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I had become really interested in competing, and at 15 and a half, 16, I had a falling out with that trainer who now we've made up and we're all good, but I had a falling out with him and found my first prep coach. And so this was a very like popular coach at the time in the area that I was in. And there was a big team, and like, I don't know if I want to like name drop, but
you can if you want, but you don't have to.
Okay. I mean, I don't really know anymore. It was Team Pogi was like the name of the thing. And it was this huge deal, like in the northern suburbs of Minneapolis. And he had a bunch of clients, competition clients. I had met someone that I'm good friends with now, Christy, who's still a competitor, working with a different coach too. But now I had this family of competitors. And I, at this point, was like in love with bodybuilding. I was like, I'm competing as soon as possible. I had learned about the different categories. I'd fallen in love with figure. Are you familiar with the different categories?
Yeah, like I know the categories. I don't know much about each of them really, but I've like heard the names.
So bikini is very like slim, mostly about like capped delts and booty. Figure is like still supposed to be a feminine look, but a lot more muscularity. You have an X frame, so it's big quads, shoulders, lats, looking like that. And then physique is like jacked, like bodybuilding women, if that makes sense. So I had fallen in love with the look of figure. I was super excited about it. I'm gonna be honest and say that this coach was like not equipped to be a bodybuilding coach. Definitely did not, especially like, I mean, frankly, I don't think that anyone at that age should be prepping for a show. You know, you're like going through a lot of development that is not happening properly just with dieting and everything. But he was extremely over prescribing of cardio. I wasn't taking any steroids, but I was taking like fat burner pills, yohimbine, doing over 2.5 hours of cardio a day, an hour of that was fasted, just like ridiculous things. And pretty soon into working with him, I like a lot of my eating disorder stuff had come back, and I was tracking my macros.
At 15, were you like 15 at this point?
I was like late 15 because I competed when I was 16. So,
okay. And then when you say like eating disorders came back, when was the first time, like the first round you felt? Was that like during gymnastics, or was that like
gymnastics into bodybuilding? And then like there was a period of time when I was lifting but feeling really good with that stuff and like excited to eat kind of thing. And then it kind of morphed from what it was before, which was mostly like diet culture-y stuff messing with my head and restriction, into binging and restricting, and then also so it turned into bulimia, which lasted for quite a while, which I'll explain too.
Yes, I want to go into that.
But so that's when that started, and I would follow my macros for a few days and then eat a shit ton of trail mix and then purge. And so it was like this constant cycle of, okay, tomorrow's going to be better, which I know is like so common with that. And I would like go to sleep so hungry one night and be so excited about it and be like, yes, I made it to bed without eating, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And my whole first prep was like that. And so when I competed, like I remember the day before, I was so excited, and I was like, you know, I wasn't prepping properly, so I wasn't as, you know, like lean as I should have been, or I was not show ready. I was also so not in the mindset to be a bodybuilder and to prep. I had so many of these obviously underlying issues that I'd never healed, and I also never said a word about it to anyone. So at this point, it was still like I had known that I had issues since I was like literally as long as I could remember, but I had a really hard time being honest with myself, and that's something that I really want to talk about once we get to where I'm at now. But I had no honesty with myself, and I would tell myself that I was doing things, or I would tell other people that I was doing things that I like totally was not doing. I was not.
I did that in high school and a little bit in college, but I remember high school, I did that exact same thing.
Yeah. And it's scary to like I felt so disconnected from myself, and that lasted for quite a while, to where like there was this ideal that I really wanted to be. And this was like the people that I looked up to, like Christina, I looked up to her so much. She was such a good bodybuilder. Like I went to her shows, like Mike, another guy that I'm still great friends with. He was like such an idol for me. He was such a, you know, stuck to his plan and looked great on stage and whatever. And like, I wanted to be this perfect bodybuilder so bad. but I had all of these like, just, there was so much lying to myself involved that I was not in a place at all where I could.
What were some of the things that you were lying to yourself about? Like, if you can remember those
I
thoughts.
would like convince myself that I was following my plan kind of thing. But it was like I was eating so much stuff off of plan, and then I would justify the purging.
Yeah.
And say like, oh well, like this will just be my last time, like it's okay, like it was just like this one meal, I'm fine, and then I'll get right back on my macros and I'll be good. And like and then my training and my cardio I was always like so consistent with. Genuinely, it was the diet that obviously I had diet issues in the past, and they had just like come back worse.
Yeah.
So a lot of it had to do with the dieting part. And yeah, I'd say like that was the biggest thing, where I would just try to justify my actions and convince myself that I was doing these things in a, or I would justify my, I guess just like the big
yeah,
thing.
that's because like when I in high school, and a little bit in college too, I totally would justify it, or like people would say stuff about it, and I'm like, I'm just eating super healthy and I'm working out a lot because I'm in cross country and dance and I want to go on runs by myself. And like, so it's like, I would like say those things, but fully like inside knowing, but also telling myself that that's not true too. Like I knew, but also I didn't want that. It's like, I didn't accept it or something. I don't know.
Yeah. The way that I've kind of, I don't know if this analogy is really going to make sense outside of my brain, but I think of it as like, me with a mask and then raw me. And like me with a mask was the person that I portrayed myself as. And I was so excited to be like the youngest one in the room. And like, I wanted to be like the youngest IFBB pro, and like, and I like got off to being this like child prodigy kind of thing in bodybuilding. When then in reality, it was like, oh, I'm eating off plan so much. I'm not following this. I also have like binge and purge issues. Like it was like me with a mask was this like person that I wanted to be, and I convinced myself that I was becoming. And then the other side was this child with a lot of underlying issues.
Yep, that makes sense. At the time, did you believe that other competitors went through that and you thought it was normal, or did you know that that wasn't normal? Like, what was your thought process there?
I knew that. Okay, so I think that I kind of separated competitors into these two different categories. The one category was the who I wanted to be, which was like the people that looked good on stage, basically. And like the people that I really looked up to or looked good. You know what I mean? Like traditionally show ready. And then the other side was like where I knew I was, but I was trying to convince myself otherwise, of like the people that couldn't do it, that weren't strong enough to get peeled, or like couldn't deal with their hunger, or dealt with these eating disorder things. And it was like this pile of people that was less than this.
Okay. Yep.
And so I wanted so badly to be this, but like I had so many things that I had to do before I could.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense.
Like I knew that there were people that, because I truly do believe that there are competitors that don't have eating disorders. But
yeah, 100%.
But I also believe that it's really common, and it's
100%. Yes.
okay that not everyone can be this other side.
Right. Yes. That's a good thing to point out.
Yeah. So first competition, I had a lot of muscle just because I had been lifting for a while at that point. But like I said, I was not conditioned. But I remember that day being so excited. I loved being on stage. Oh my God. I loved it. I loved posing. I loved doing my little like individual one. I remember that feeling of being up there and just being like, oh fuck yeah, like I'm supposed to be here, even though like whatever else was going on. But that was so exciting. My posing coach at the time was an incredible person named Alicia, who.
Oh yeah, okay. I knew you had worked with her, but I didn't know like at what point in your story you did. So okay.
Yeah, so she was my posing coach, and I actually introduced Kiana to her.
Yes, that's right. Okay.
So I was working with her with posing during that first competition, and I was telling her some of these things that my coach was having me do, like this insane amount of cardio, probably 20 hours a week of cardio. And, you know, I never mentioned eating disorder things up until this point, but I like was telling her about the protocol that he was having me do, which was obviously adding.
She's probably like, hell no, what are you doing?
He was like, hell no, exactly. And her boyfriend, Dennis, is also incredible. He's both of them are like, oh man, there's so much more to this story. I hope this isn't too long, but so they're like super important people to me. I ended up telling her about things, and she was just like, Marlena, like I don't want to talk poorly of any other coaches. I understand that everyone has their own theories and whatnot, but like this is not okay. Like that's not okay to be doing what you were doing. And so I started working with her, and I'd known that she was a prep coach, but like I said, I'd been working with Patrick, and then so competed with him for the first time. So I started working with her. Immediately, we took away all my cardio. Immediately, we upped my food. I did not gain 1 million pounds like I thought I was going to. I think I was like 17 at this point, and I got on program with her. I still was having these issues, these eating disorder issues, this body image stuff. After my show, I had like gained a little bit of weight, but not a ton, I don't think. And just, it was these two sides of like, I'm loving my training, and I love being in the gym and this, and I love the bodybuilding culture, blah, 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 but I also have all these other issues that I'm not really talking about. And I'm kind of, okay, I know they exist, but I'm going to shove them away.
Yep.
I prepped with her. So I started prep, I believe, March or April of 2020. So it was like peak COVID time, or I guess a little bit, basically peak COVID time. And we didn't really know when I was going to compete. I think originally it was going to be August, and then it got pushed back because shows were being canceled. And I like got pretty lean. I looked 1,000 times better than I did my first show. I'd really like put on a lot of muscle, and I think I like lost 30 something pounds during that prep. I think I competed at like 126, and I had started at probably 155 or so. So I had lost a lot of weight. I was pretty lean. I wasn't like quite stage lean when I competed, but I was so convinced that I like had another 20 pounds to lose. My body dysmorphia that prep was absolutely insane. Like looking back at pictures now, I'm like, girl, you were shredded, but like, I did not think I was shredded at all. But that was my first time feeling like, I mean, I still had like some minor binges and, you know, there was still eating disorder stuff there, but it was my first time doing a successful prep and a successful cut. And so I felt like I'd finally, like, not completely, but to a certain extent, been able to follow plan and like did, you know, my training and everything. But I also wanted to be pushed harder and harder and harder because I wanted to be leaner.
And were you restricting and binging at this point still? Like you were still doing some of that, or was that less?
It was a lot less, but I think like there were times when I was eating off plan kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But it was definitely less than the first one. But I also do believe that even though I was on plan more, I was still not at all, and I had not healed from disordered stuff. So there was still a lot there with that. So October 2020, I competed in figure again. At that point, I like moved out of my parents for the first time. I was 18. I was reading this book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yes, I haven't read it, but I've read A New Earth. Yeah.
Yeah. So that book, like, man, I call that book my Bible. I am not a religious person in any sense, but like that book did something to me.
Yeah.
And I felt like for the first time I had woken up from this. I was able to have full body awareness and be aware of my thoughts instead of being my thoughts. And that idea of the separation from your mind. And
I just got massive goosebumps. Holy shit. The way you just described that is like, I couldn't have said any better. I totally know what you mean.
It was just like, I'm getting shivers now too, thinking about it. And I do every time I talk about this, because that experience, like, just a little side story, the first time that I was able to get that feeling of that separation, I remember I was wearing white nail polish, and every morning I would like go and get my steps in because I had a step goal on prep. And I remember like taking because I'd read in the morning and then I'd go for a walk. And I remember like trying to apply what I read about on my walk, and then like be able to expand that feeling of living in the now and of awareness. And I was watching my nail polish every single day, like chip away, and like looking at my nails was the first time that I was truly in the now and not consumed by my thought and believing that my thought was all that I was, if that makes sense. I remember like I'd had these flashbacks when that would happen to being a child dealing with insomnia. And when I held my breath, I was able to stop my anxious thoughts. And like another thing is I had dealt with anxiety this whole time. That was a big piece too. But I remember like when I held my breath when I was probably 6, 7 years old, at night, my thoughts would go away and I was completely calm and I was so at peace and silent, and then I'd breathe again and then my thoughts would come back. And so I made that connection that, at that point, like I was soothing myself by being in the now, but I didn't know how to do it while I was breathing, like I didn't know what I was doing. So I didn't know how to hold on to it. So reading that book during prep really opened my eyes up to what was going on with my body and what I had done the last, at that point, 6 years. And even before that, and like been like, oh my God, like this isn't, you're not okay kind of thing. Like this is really an obsession. And this is, I was able to separate myself from all of this whole idea that I had of my life. Yeah. And so I competed, but I was still like very much in the bodybuilding mindset. Like I wanted to still do it, but I had just realized, okay, I think we need to heal some things after this competition before we can get back into it. So competed October, competed November. 5 days after my show, I was like, I need to get out of this environment. That whole feeling and learning that I had from that book, I was becoming like, it was kind of consuming me, but in a really good way, but also in a way that was like, I need to do something about this because I don't know. This is my whole identity. I don't have a social life. I was 18. I was like, all I cared about was being a good bodybuilder.